Those first four modules are kind of the first half that deals with this question of who do we need to be, that inward looking. So then we pivot to the outside world and we look at the rigged game. And that really dives into the systems and structures that surround us, that perpetuate this world of inequality. We look at money and power and politics in particular, and race. That takes us into game-changing movements, and this is where we really outline two crucial movements that we think are critical to spend time in. This isn't prohibitive of other things that interest you or that are important to look at, but where we think these are really two movements where all of our interests can converge. The movement to really create a real democracy, democratized democracy, and the movement to pull our addiction away from fossil fuels. We close with going forth, and this is really how to stay in community and stay in action over the long term. A key piece of going forth is what we call the action plan, something to sustain you over the long term, to really outline what are your goals, how can you achieve them, and using who as a partner and ally.
So that's what we call the arc of the intensive. And again, you'll notice as you're in it, places where you're real comfortable and places where you're shocked maybe or surprised, and places where it just feels wrong. And just notice all of it. See if you can stay open to all of it. Let's have a poll right now. You by now have probably met with your small group twice by conference call. And we'll put the poll up on the screen for you on the phone. The poll is going to say, how have they been going? How's your small meeting groups gone? How have they gone? First answer is love them, best part so far. Another option is they're fine, glad I've done them. Another option, disappointing. Another option is I've been having technical problems. And the final option is what small meeting groups? So, yeah. So everybody weigh in if you can, if you're at a computer. So 23% of the people, 28 love them. So far, they're their very favorite part. We've got about half the people say they're great. They're fine. I'm glad I've done them. Nobody's been disappointed. That's wonderful. 4 people have had major tech problems. And whoever is the what small group meeting, would you identify yourself in the chat room? And then Ariel or Mario will be very happy to help you find your way to your small meeting group. They've probably been wondering where the heck you are. Now we're going to be able to link you back up. Okay.
I'll also say, for those of you who've had major tech problems, email intensive@pachamama.org, and we would be happy to troubleshoot with you. You're not the only one. We've definitely supported some people to get through technical hurdles. So let us know, and we can help you out.
And you see Ariel's posted that web address right there in the chat. Okay, so let's take a little slideshow again. Part of what we're doing tonight is getting a feel for who's in the course. So here's a slideshow that Ariel and the team have put together that will give us a little idea, maybe a PowerPoint more accurately stated. So there we are. Not all of us, but there's a lot of us.
Yeah. So, you know, these slides are really going to be, these are folks who've taken the course, and all of the data that we're going to show you in a moment is all of the people who are currently involved in your course. And one thing I'll just say is the intensive actually is bringing people from across the world. I've said that, but it's just astounding. Increasingly, people from across the world are really interested, even though it's really US focused. So people from all walks of life are really interested.
Okay, next slide, please. So, total number of people who signed up for this intensive are 231. And age distribution, let's just look where the big numbers are. I like it when you do that.
I can see these, yes.
Okay.
So, you know, interestingly, we've got 6% of us are in the 18 to 24 range. I actually think that's a record.
A record high?
A record high, yeah.
Hey, 6%!
We don't usually attract young people, so if you're on the phone, welcome. Really happy to hear that you're here and really interested in your feedback. About 13% of us are between 25 to 34, which actually means about 80% of us are above 35. And really
Wow, that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, 80% of us are over 35, with 26% of us between 55 and 64, and about 20% of us either between 45 and 55 or above 65. So that contingent of people over 45 is actually about 46% of the entire course. So
Over
almost,
45, okay.
yeah, almost half of you are over 45. It's interesting, and actually what's interesting about the 55 to 65, some of you are maybe approaching retirement or thinking, what is life about? What am I going to do? And those of us in the 35 to 44 range are thinking the same thing, but at different times in our life. So that's really wonderful that we get to learn and share with each other.
I'll be happy to do the gender distribution chart. It's quite simple for those of you on the phone. We've got 76% of the participants in your intensive are female and 24% are male. And I am not going to make any editing comment about that. I'm just going to let the numbers speak for themselves. Folks, that's who's here. 76% of the people you'll bump into in the course, in the discussion forums, etc., are most likely going to be women. Okay, next slide. So here we are. I'll try to see if I can get this. If I get it wrong, you tell me.
Yes.
Okay. So 71% of us in this course are from North America, and we are including Mexico and Canada in that. 14% are in Europe, coming from Europe. Asia, 3%. Oceania, which is going to be Australia and New Zealand, is 7%. 2% in Africa, signed on from Africa, and 3% from Latin America. And as Mario said, again, the course was designed with a pretty US-centric content. And those of you who keep coming from other countries and still manage to get value and are happy to be in the course, we're really, really happy. Sorry, we really wanted to focus on what would make a difference here in the US, and we didn't have and don't have the expertise to how to translate that really internationally. But as people go through the intensive from various countries, I know there's a real strong contingent in Latin America who are pretty committed to adapting the intensive for a Spanish-speaking audience.
Yeah. So welcome, and we're interested in your feedback, and really glad you're here. And just for data's sake, actually, Mexico and Central America are included in Latin America for purposes of metrics.
Okay.
So that includes North America is just people in the U.S.
Oh, okay.
And Canada.
Okay. Next slide.
So here's just a list of the countries represented. To us, this means a lot, and there are game changers needed across the world. Argentina, Canada, Brazil, the UK, Mexico, the Netherlands. It really spans the globe, and I actually don't know what the numbers are. I'd really love to find out. For now, of all of the people across the world, the numbers of international people who've taken the intensive is actually pretty impressive. And so welcome to all of you, and I would really clearly say, a lot of this is going to be relevant anywhere. Some of the particular contexts are U.S. Actually, all of them are particular for the U.S., but there are people working across the world, actually, to find ways. There's actually some folks out in Europe and potentially working on a regional game-changing movement that we'll include in the near future. So pretty impressive, the span of countries that are here. Let's go to the next slide. So this gives you a sense of some of the communities represented from the US. Now, we don't actually have all of the data. When you applied for the course, you gave us your zip code, and actually a significant portion of you didn't give your zip code, which is fine. But for those of you who did, which I would say it's about maybe a third or half.
Half did give zip code?
Correct, maybe half, gave us their zip codes, and here they are grouped together. So, we've got a good contingent of people from the West Coast, and interestingly scattered from the Midwest on to places like Florida, which I actually know if there's anybody on Florida. Florida is a place where a community is developing, a Pachamama Alliance community is developing. So welcome to all of you. Wonderful. So the next slide.
You were asked to fill out an application to be in this course, and we looked them over and wanted to share just to get a taste of why are people taking the intensive. So somebody said, I hope to gain additional skills to use in building inner resilience, as well as building local resilience in my community.
Next one. I'll read this one. I hope that through this course I can learn new ideas, hear from others, question my own thinking, and ultimately empower myself to be an agent for change in my society and to support others to do so too. Next slide.
I feel stuck in many ways, and I want to take action, but I'm having trouble taking the first steps. This looks like a great place to start.
Next slide. I am looking for a path I can take to be active in this world.
I found that a lot of my learning has led me to feel despair and helplessness. A course like this is exactly what I've been searching for to help me gain back my sense of control over our current situation here on beautiful Mother Earth.
And is there another? Great. Wonderful. So, this gives you a sense of who you're in a cohort with, the people you're sharing this journey with. We're finding a lot of these themes actually resound through many of your applications. Hopefully they resound and resonate with you too. And again, feel free, there's a place on the course website that people like to know about, and we keep meaning to post it, but there's a a participant directory where you can actually reach out to people and browse. It's another great way of getting to know people who are in the course, and you might find some interesting things. We asked you to build a profile when you started the course, and this is really so that other people can kind of browse and look to see what are some of the interests, where are people, and what's going on with them.
So when you're on the Moodle site, most of the stuff's on the left, the big part on the left. All those buttons on the right, all those boxes, if you click on all of them, you're going to find some pretty interesting stuff there.
Yeah. So let's jump into our next poll. This poll is for those of you on the phone. The question is, how do you feel about the future? And you should see the poll right in front of your screen for those of you on the computer, and there are 4 options: pessimistic and fearful. Second option, worried but hopeful. Optimistic and enthusiastic, or I try not to think about it. So how are you feeling about the future? Pessimistic and fearful, worried but hopeful, optimistic and enthusiastic, or I try not to think about it. So about 58% of you say worried but hopeful. About 27% and 26% of you are optimistic and enthusiastic. One person out there trying not to think about it, and about 2 folks who were pessimistic and fearful. So, I think the biggest thing that I would say is to really allow your truth to show up. It's okay. Whether you're pessimistic or worried or optimistic or whatnot, really allow it to be here. If you're interested in transformation, starting where you are is crucial, is really important, and not chasing away what is true and what is real for you.
Good point. And Steve and Christine, thanks for mentioning that you can't hear me. I will try to speak louder, and we'll see if we can fix that technically as well. It's a good use of the chat, by the way. Okay.
Great.
Can we look at this next poll? And that is, why are you taking the course? Again, this is for the rest of us to find out about you, but maybe also for you to find out about you. So here are the options we're giving. You can choose one. That's the way this thing works. Main reason you're taking the course, this is for people on the phone. I need hope and inspiration. I want to connect with others. I want to understand the issues. I'm ready to get into action. So those are your options. And we've got currently
47% of people who say they're ready to get into action, about 50% of people are ready to get into action. Just below that, we got people who say, I want to connect with others, people looking for community at about 28%. And then about 16%, 15%, people who want to understand the issues better, followed by people really needing a sense of hope and inspiration. So yeah, it looks like it's settling at about 45% of people who are interested in getting into action. Wonderful, welcome. Hang in there. Tracy mentioned it, but we really focus the first half of the course, really focuses on building the inner resources necessary to be the kind of game changer we think is necessary to really do effective systemic change. At Module 5, we'll start to pivot and talk to you about action and getting involved. Very cool.
Actually, when I look at that list on the left, you're going to get all those things. So you're going to get inspiration, you're going to get information, you're going to get community, and you're going to find ways to get into action. So it'll all come. Again, hopefully by now you've figured out what we mean when we say your discussion forums. That's the place when you go to the course site where we post a question, and then there's a kind of empty box, and you're supposed to type in your response, and then you see what other people write, and then you can reply to what they wrote, or you can start a whole new topic. It's a very rich part of the course. I'll say a couple things we've found so far. Some people don't like to write so much. They say, I'm into the course, I love it, I love reading everything, but it's too much stress for me to write. So those people, fine, don't write. Some people say, I'd rather do all my relating in the small groups, and frankly, the small groups, some of these small groups are still meeting from way back when. So after the intensive ends, a lot of people like to just keep meeting in their small groups. It does help, though, if you read the discussion forums, even if you're not going to write your own theory of the world on it. And if you can get yourself even just to say, thanks, Sue, for posting that. I mean, it helps build the community, and that's one of the things that's very valuable here. We've organized you into groups. So you're in a small group. Your phone group is somewhere probably between 8 and 12 people. Maybe it varies week to week. And then we put some of those groups together for the discussion forums. So when you're reading on a discussion forum, you're not reading what all 241 people have written. We tried that once. People said it was overwhelming, too much. Okay. So what we want to do right now is just read you some of the postings that caught our eyes that we thought, again, by way of getting to know who else is in this course with you, what are they thinking? So here's what somebody said. I know the world needs what I can give. I'm ready to move into action. I'm looking for help and support from this program to figure out what's the best I can do. And then Karen kind of summarized it, and she said, I think many of us signed up for this intensive in order to dig deeper and shake free of feelings of helplessness or cynicism or fear or whatever holds us back.
This is one that came out of one of the first discussion forums. We, the people, have to take responsibility for giving our power away. You can't just say the big corporations and the corrupt politicians have rigged the game without taking some responsibility for letting that happen.
And here's somebody else. Again, this question was about responding. I think it said, how do you feel about Bill Twist's talk, is the game rigged? So somebody else said, well, as an avid citizen voter, I'd say yes, the system game is rigged, but we have allowed it to become so through apathy and couch sitting. Obviously, that's a simplistic statement of view, but really, movements are made up of people who vote with their bodies in marches and sit-ins and fasts, not just on election day. So that's important too.
This one is something really clicked for me while watching the Game is Rigged video, which is Bill Twist's comment that being political doesn't mean being committed to conflict. It means using structures that we've erected in order to create the future that we want. It's working with the system, not against it.
Amanda wrote, people are going on about business as usual. Nobody really wants to see the truth because it hurts so bad. Alliances and intentional communities not only help each other give the truth, they also work towards making a difference from the root upwards. I really hope it's before it's too late, because I want my 8-month-old to have a wonderful future.
This one is from the discussion on the principles of spiritual leadership. Each principle by itself could be a whole life commitment. They are so powerful and meaningful that it is hard to choose.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. You could just live your life between the qualities of a game changer and the principles of spiritual leadership. If you had 2 pieces of paper that you wanted to use as a beacon for yourselves, you could do a lot worse than using those 2. Okay, this is on story, the module you just finished. Ultimately, corporations are made up of humans who have the same base desires and needs as all of us: love, belonging, health, and a feeling of security. The challenge then is shifting our collective cultural story to one of connection and interbeing, and breaking down the systemic, bureaucratic, and economic structures that disempower even the humans in power of their humanity. And Kelsey put that in. You know, I just can't think of a better way to encapsulate what this whole intensive is about. That's really neat. And then finally, someone said, currently what keeps me grounded is knowing that there are communities of people actively working together to make changes. Yeah, welcome. Here's one of them.
Wonderful, thank you. So first off, I just want to say, you know, again, wonderful hearing from you. One thing I will say about the discussion forums is, you know, it's a great place to kind of think through an idea and get it out there. Take your time. You don't have to, you're not constrained by a 75-minute phone call. So if you haven't yet, give it a shot. Give it a try. It's actually a great venue. And if you're not up for coming up with your own idea, it really does mean a lot to people to acknowledge what other people have posted. It doesn't have to be Pulitzer worthy. Just get out there, share your voice. Let's move on to our next poll. This is, for those of you on the phone, the question is, how would you describe your situation? And we're really talking about community here. The question is, how would you describe your situation, with 4 possible answers? The first answer is isolated, looking for community. The second, mostly relate to world issues online. The third option is have a few people I can work with. The fourth option is part of a community taking on issues. So really this is a question of how would you describe your situation in regards to community. We've got about 50% of people who are part of a community that are taking on issues, and about 33% of people who have a few people they can work with, about 12% of people who mostly engage online, and about the same who really have a sense of isolation. So 2 things I want to say. For those of you, mostly engage online, and it's a great avenue. Tons happens online. We're trying to facilitate that. And you'll have an opportunity to stay engaged online with communities across the country, really, both through your small groups, and some of the offerings we'll actually introduce to you later with the Pachamama Alliance communities. For those of you in community, it looks like about 42% of people have a few people they can work with. We're really big on you can't do it alone. Don't expect that you can do it alone. It's crucial to stay in community. That takes us to something else we wanted to talk to you about, which is a deeper look into the intensive. Why is it here? What are some of the main things we're trying to offer besides just the curriculum? I also want to point out, we're going to open it up to questions really soon, so if you have them, technical or otherwise, start mulling them over now. So if you're familiar with the intensive, then you know it's part of the Pachamama Alliance, and I think it's crucial to understand some of the origin story and the history of the Pachamama Alliance to really get why we're doing the intensive. So, what was it, 20 years ago, actually almost exactly 20 years ago, John Perkins and Lynn Twist and Bill Twist were really called to the rainforest by the Achuar to partner and support both saving the rainforest, their culture, their land. Now, I say the Achuar called, they would actually probably say that the rainforest called. The rainforest called people from the north through the Achuar to really save what is happening and really stop what's happening in the rainforest and to the people who live there. For years, there was one of the most incredible partnerships that I've ever heard of. Respectful, loving, really equals partnering on saving a part of the world that is crucial to all of us who live on the earth. And it was an incredible partnership. And after a few years, the Achuar actually said that the work that you have to do, the opportunity here, is for you to change the dream of the modern world. And for them, what that meant is they were a dream culture. Their dreams deeply informed their reality and what was true in the world. This is another way of saying that they were tasked with changing the reality of the modern world, the direction that we're heading, and waking us up to what is actually happening in the world, what we are doing in the world. Out of that came the Awakening the Dreamer Symposium, the Awakening the Dreamer Changing the Dream Symposium. This was a multimedia workshop that really woke people up to what is happening in our world, what are the possibilities, where can we go from here, and it's been incredibly successful. Almost 250,000 people have actually watched it.
And when we designed it, we were pretty clear that if people just understood what's going on in the world and saw that there's a possibility that things could change and that they could have a role, that kind of how to get involved would just roll out in front of them. And that worked for quite a while, and at some point it became clear that if we, and by we I am including you, if we are committed to bringing forth an environmentally sustainable, spiritually fulfilling, socially just human presence on this planet, there's actually something in the way. There is something in the way from having that vision made possible. And it really took us quite a while to admit that okay, I'm really committed. No, now I'm really super committed. And I'll work real hard on it. But to understand that, there's actually some systems in place that we can't ignore. We cannot ignore and say we're committed to that vision. And that was a real, inquiry for us at the Pachamama Alliance, to realize that we say you too, have to actually engage in the systems if we're going to be true to delivering on this mission that we're so committed to.
And that's really what the intensive was sprung from.
Right.
That what is there to do in the world, bringing along these key aspects of personal transformation. I mean, to be honest, I think the Pachamama Alliance, you have done an incredible job of cultivating personal transformation in people. How to take those lessons and that inspiration and look at the outer world, look at the systems and structures, look at economic inequality, at race, at democracy, at climate change, and engage with them from a place of depth, of love, and interconnectedness. That's really what the intensive is trying to accomplish. For you to take the depth that a lot of you, my guess, have been cultivating over your lifetimes, that you're deeply committed to, with the commitment to social justice and environmental sustainability, and that when you engage in those things, you want your heart to be there, you want your soul to be there. And that's really what we're trying to create. How do all of those things fit together? The spiritual satisfaction, the emotional intelligence, the political action, and the community engagement. How do they all live together so that is what action actually looks like, that all of you is engaged and present?
And I don't want to try to push the entire Game Changer Intensive into this gathering tonight, but a number of you do have questions like, well, why did you pick democracy and climate change? There's so much that needs to be worked on in the world. I'm working on this, I'm real excited about it. I'm working on this, it's real exciting. It'll be a game changer if this, if this, if this, if this. And I don't want to make the argument for it tonight. We have a whole module based on that, and you've heard a little bit from Bill so far. But just to briefly say, yeah, it's all needed. And we should all be doing whatever calls to us, truly. Whatever calls to you, whatever gets, kind of grabs you where you're not even in control, you're so into it or so moved to it. We heartily encourage you to do it. And at the same time, we want to point out that from our point of view, that were there to be a true democracy where the voice of the people rule, were that to be in place, that one state would make all the other stuff so much more easy to accomplish. So that would be like a kingpin if we get that in place. So that's one of the reasons we're majorly suggesting put some of your time, energy, love, intelligence, etc., into creating a democracy. And there are many, many avenues in. We'll be talking about pricing carbon. There are tons of ways you could participate. So that's one. And then the other one is, well, you need, as Henry David Thoreau says, what good is a house if you don't have a habitable planet on which to put it? So yeah, we need to make sure we have an Earth, we have a planet that's sustainable as we do our work. So that's the short version of our thinking on these two things.
So now's where we open it up to any questions that you may have for Tracy or me. So right in the chat area, we're going to give it a couple of minutes to answer any questions that emerge for you. That may be about the course, may be about practicalities, whatever it may be. We'd love to hear from you, and we'd love to answer them. We'll certainly try.
And you may not have any. Maybe it's all perfectly clear, but just so that you aren't frustrated, so you do have access. If there's anything you'd like to hear a little bit more about, we're happy to do it. And other than that, we'll go on with our polls. We'll wait just a minute.
The chats, again, are just on the right-hand side of your screen. How do I get help with making chat work? Looks like you succeeded, Wendy. We got your questions, so any questions you want to follow up with, go for it, but you got it to work. Does the course address capitalism?
Not directly. Not directly. Part of the challenge of creating both the symposium and the intensive is what not to include, because there's all the world, there's everything. And we're kind of picking our shots. And so we aren't directly addressing capitalism, although some of the speakers that you watch and some of the articles will make reference to it, but that's not one of the things we focused on in the course. Thanks for the question.
And I'll probably add, Tracy's absolutely right. And from those speakers and some of the reading, you'll get a sense of the kind of capitalism that we live in, that is currently kind of guiding the systems and structures. You'll learn a lot about that, and there will be a position developed around that. But capitalism itself is not the focus of what we look at. Democracy and climate change are really the issues that we focus on, and you'll see how capitalism relates to those as you dive through the material.
Okay, let's go to the next quick poll, if we could. And in this one, in terms of activism, what's true for you? And here are your options. I'm a longtime activist. I see myself as a longtime activist. I've been involved with some causes. I care a lot, but I actually don't have time. Or I want to, but I don't know what to do. So if you could post there.
So interestingly, we got about equal numbers of people who want to but don't know what to do, or long-term activists. Actually, we got about 42% of people, 33% of people who were long-term activists. About 37 of people who've been involved with some causes. About 25% of people want to get involved but don't know what to do. So about 65, 66% of you are either currently activists, longtime activists, or have been involved with one cause or another. We bring this up because some people have a trigger with the word activism. What does it mean? We really want to get you comfortable with it. We're going to follow this up with a chat, actually. Wonderful, thank you. So we're actually going to go through several chats now, and the first chat question is there a difference between activism and being in action?
We're not putting this here, and then we're going to tell you the answer, by the way.
Yeah.
We don't have an answer to this. This is actually an inquiry. We want to engage with you. What do you think?
So is there a difference between activism and being in action? And this is really an invitation for you to consider those differences. It's possible the word activism isn't a trigger for you, and that's wonderful. And if it is, take this query, and even if it isn't for you, is there a difference between activism and being in action?
For you, what's the answer to that question? So just try posting something in the chat. What's true for you? Is there a difference between activism and being in action? So okay, Cliff, you get the prize for the one-word answer. Maybe you could say a little bit more. In what way, anybody? What's the difference? How do they live differently for you? So Zeke says activism is more goal-oriented, and being in action may not be as focused. That's one way to think about it, yeah.
Activism is more goal-oriented, and being in action is almost like a state of being, not necessarily focused. I think being in action is more flexible. Interesting.
Ariel, feel free to weigh in on this yourself.
What would you say? What's real for you?
Difference between activism and being in action. I mean, one of the reasons we posted this question is because somebody asked that on one of the chats, and we realized we didn't have a policy. We wanted to know, I don't know, what do you think? I don't know what you think.
What comes up for me is I play guitar, and I'm in a band, but I don't consider myself a musician. There's something sort of almost, for me, it's taking something seriously enough that you give it a title, like my activism or I'm a musician. So there's for me, it lives as kind of an identity versus a characteristic of me.
That's interesting.
Activism's a noun. Being in action is a verb. I've seen a couple of indications of that. So being in action ensures you walk your talk. And that is from our lovely Ariel.
Activism is perhaps the long view, and being in action is more event or related or the immediate focus. Yeah, anyway, just since we're talking about being a game changer, there is some action element of it, so just want to make sure you're paving the way for yourself by seeing, do you have any hooks on the words?
So let's bring up our next chat. This next chat is, how are you taking what you've learned from the course out into the world?
So far.
How are you taking what you've learned from the course out into the world? We're at, about Module 3 was just released yesterday. Not sure you've had a look at it. So it's really 2 modules. And from what you've learned already, what, if anything, are you taking out into the world? So this, again, is an invitation to use the chats to share with each other and really get a sense of what people are up to.
So has the intensive, being in this intensive so far affected any of your behavior, any of your conversations, maybe any of your thoughts? We can use our time together to cross-pollinate a little bit.
I'm preaching to the choir so far. Yay for choirs. I sense so far sounds like there's a desire to talk to people beyond the choir. Good luck with that, but wonderful that you're talking to people about it. I'm amping my conversation regarding the power of story. Talking with folks more about what I'm learning, also trying to syncretize the education with my worldview. Wonderful. Really wrestling with what you know and what you're learning.
Sometimes I post videos or quotes from the modules on Facebook to get conversation started. People often share them on their page. Feels a bit like a rippling effect. Yeah. Exactly.
I'm talking to people, but hesitantly until I see how it develops.
And I wonder what the it is there, Arul, how how the conversation develops, how you feel about it, their reaction. Do all those things matter?
I'm more self-consciously changing the frames through which I see a lot of horrible things in the world. Thank you, Zeke. That reminds me of the power of story. That's how I interpret that statement, at least. Really assertively and proactively addressing the story that surrounds you.
And for my money, there's absolutely nothing more powerful than you can do than to develop that muscle. To be able, because there is all that stuff out in the world. There is. It's there. Now, is it going to choke us? Is it going to suffocate us? Is it going to have us die of a broken heart? Can we make a story, have a way of holding it? Some people don't like the word story. Can you frame it in a way where you're not overwhelmed and burdened and want to shoot yourself? That's powerful. You want to know power? That's power.
Absolutely. Wonderful. And just as a reminder, all of these chats are going to be posted tomorrow on the course website, so you'll be able to review them, any that you missed or any that you're particularly inspired or touched by. You can take the names of the folks who are on here and go look in the participant directory and ping those people from the course. You can actually send them messages or emails right from the course website.
Okay. Now, Wendy's taking us into, what's it called? What's John Paul Sartre?
Don't know.
Camus. Anyway, existentialism. Here's a question. I've been challenged in my worldview about non-dualism. Do we really have free will at all? If not, how can I choose to take action? That you need to go to your spiritual advisor and sit on your cushion and spend your time in your pew and in your prayers. That's certainly one of the most universal questions any of us have as human beings. Do we have a role? Is it all preordained or not? That's certainly nothing I'm going to try to answer, but let's spend our lives examining that one. Okay. I think you remember from the first module the concept of stretch zone, and I want to re-enroll you in the value of being willing to tolerate being in your stretch zone. So if you remember, the model is, here we have our comfort zone. It's the area where we feel comfortable. And maybe it's kind of big and spacious, and people think, you're amazing. You're just amazing. Yeah, but you and I know it's still an area where I feel comfortable, even being uncomfortable. I might have a stretch zone that includes being uncomfortable. So there's a stretch zone. Then there's the panic zone, which is the thing which is like, even if it were going to save all humanity forever, I can't do that thing. So there's the panic zone, there's your comfort zone, and in between these zones are what we're calling the stretch zone. And as I think we said in that module, all movement happens in the stretch zone. Things don't change when you stay in your comfort zone. Things don't change when I stay in my comfort zone. They don't. And it could be on a tiny level or a mega level. So one of the themes of the course, one of the mantras is, are you willing to move into your stretch zone? In these conversations, for example, in the amount of time the course is taking, in whether you like to write on discussion forums or you like to be invisible, in whether you're going to speak up on your small meeting group or you can just let it go, in whether you're going to join this group or not, whatever it is. Our invitation to you is to use the time in your Game Changer Intensive as a time to actively convince yourself, commit yourself to living actively in your stretch zone. We're throwing down the gauntlet and an invitation to do that.
And one of the things that I'll say, Tracy said it, but as the person who talks a lot to the moderators, I hear directly, people, usually what it shows up as some kind of discomfort with maybe the content. And what we're saying, what we're inviting is sit with that. Don't chase it away. Don't rush to judgment on it. And if you do have a judgment, just notice it and engage and continue engaging. What we're really hoping for is that through that bumping up against your boundaries will come your transformation, will come your sort of evolution, whatever that looks like. And it may very well not look like what we're talking about. You may take our principles and decide they're not for you. But pushing your boundaries and really engaging is a great way of engaging with anything. And we're really inviting you to do that while you're in the intensive.
And let's get specific. So let's get the next chat up there. This is a personal question to you. What is it that you would do to put yourself in your stretch zone in the intensive? Just name something where if you were doing that, you'd know you were in your stretch zone. Take a minute. What would that be for you?
What would you do to put yourself in your stretch zone? It was really seeking that growth and you're consciously pushing your boundaries to stretch. So what would you need to do to put yourself in your stretch zone during the intensive? Take a moment and go ahead and share it on the chat logs here.
What would you need to? What would I need to in this intensive?
I will say for me, it's really being comfortable with all of the different, and especially when working with moderators, being comfortable with the timing of transformation. Sometimes this looks like people leave the intensive super excited, and sometimes it's a slow simmer that takes a while. So for me, really trusting that there's a longevity to this material, and that it may show up in different timings for different people is important for me.
That's great.
Risk being misunderstood. Wow, that's beautiful. What about you?
I think specifically with the course material, it's being willing to look at it newly, and instead of thinking, "Oh, we really got this great intensive done," it's more like, "Wait, 4 people mentioned that blank, blank, blank. Okay, maybe we should throw this out. Maybe we should add this in." So it's a very dynamic and not stable process that I'm committed to.
Beautiful. I'll just say that's a great pitch for feedback when it comes.
Right.
Not so much about doing, more about being. I need to hold the sense of interconnectedness throughout my waking life.
Barb, if we could do this one, how great it would be. Listen deeply and seriously. Listen deeply and seriously consider the perspective of people who say things very different from what I believe. Man, there's a stretch zone for you. It's easy to agree with Mario, for me.
That's a very generous and big-hearted place to stand as well. And Barb is actually a moderator, and she has shown herself time and time again to be just that. Any other thoughts on what you could do to put yourself in your stretch zone during the intensive? Improve about speaking out when the urge is there, but I am unsure if the words will come out right, or if I know enough about the subject. In other words, stop the self-doubt.
I'm signing up for that one, Amanda. That's beautifully put.
Great. Cool. So, thank you so much. We're at 6:46, and I wanted to talk to you about tuition. So, we do have a tuition. You tell us what it is. So, we actually don't put $1 to what the course, what you should pay for the course, but the course is absolutely dependent on donations. And things cost money. Make no mistake, this platform that we're on right now, the course website, all of that takes a whole team of people and resources to get done. And we really hope that you will consider what you can contribute to the intensive. And we're going to make a formal ask at the end of the course, but there is a donate button on the course website. We'll actually give it to you now. There's a donate button on the course. We invite you to use it. And you're welcome to use it now. Some of these courses cost hundreds of dollars, some thousands. We actually aren't going to tell you exactly what you should pay. We want you to tell us. And but we really want you to tell us something. And we really expect that you'll find something, whatever that looks like for you. that you find a way to contribute to the course that's real for you. Maybe consider putting yourself in the stretch zone for what's real for you, and that really exemplifies the value you put in what we're up to and what your journey is as part of this.
Okay, we're coming to the end of our gathering. You've got your small meeting groups on Sunday, Monday, or Tuesday coming up. The topic is evolutionary activism. Evolutionary activists. It's a nice, as Mario said, provocative, interesting module. You should have great discussion forums and small group meetings on it. And be sure and do let your team know if you're not going to be able to make it to your call. Let your team know.
I mentioned this, but one of the buttons on the home screen is a feedback button. I can't emphasize enough how important feedback is to us. We truly take it seriously. We mull it over, we integrate it, and we make changes based off of it. So please, please consider posting your feedback on the course website. We review everything, and we will be in touch with responding to every feedback request, actually. But we really, really invite you to do that.
There is a button called Great Stuff. We say button, but it's really kind of a long, skinny thing on the right. It's called Great Stuff. That's the one place where you can go and post something that everyone in the intensive has access to. So in the course of your life, you might find stuff that's exciting, that's interesting, you think would be of interest to people in this community. Feel free to post it there.
Wonderful. I love Barb said they really do listen. Great. So your small meeting groups, your next round is going to start this Sunday, Monday, or Tuesday. I really encourage you, if you haven't been able to go to one, to do so. If you need a group, reach out to intensive@pachamama.org, and we will be happy to find you one. And in the meantime, enjoy yourselves. We send you lots of love. We love hearing from you if you want to share any feedback.
And we want you to also be thinking of who might you want to be inviting into the next intensive. There's another one coming up in September. People report that it's so fun when there are people who share this whole kind of thinking together. So you can be thinking of those people along the way.
We're going to keep the chat room open for a few minutes, so we're going to sign off, but you're welcome to continue engaging with each other. And again, everything will be posted tomorrow on the course website. So from here in San Francisco, we send you lots and lots of love. Take care.
Have a great intensive.
Bye-bye.